it's on yours now, hopefully.
Let's see. It is. All right, let me go share it.
We were on the same trip, similar trip 2 years ago, and JV had me zoom in from our hotel because he didn't have anybody on the show, so it was just me and him, and I was in Colorado, and we were talking to Mark about whether I could get by with like smoking a joint on the show in Colorado, and we were trying to figure out FEC rules, and then all of a sudden I was like, wait, this is probably not good for my image to be forever. No, never mind, we're not gonna do this, guys.
Well, Vic, I appreciate you being on here. You know,
for sure.
You know, and I know, I mean, we're glad to have you, but we had asked Mayor, but he was like, not missing Trump tonight. Like,
right.
He said, I've been waiting for this for 4 years, having to deal with a fake president, and I was like, oh, okay, and you know, we try to remain apolitical. I try not to get into discussions with my colleagues about politics. I think we're mostly liberal in our line of work for something.
Sometimes people surprise us.
But yeah, every once in a while you'll see somebody, you know, saying something, but man, Mayor was like going crazy about like,
He's probably
are you
pumped
kidding?
Vance is
like
the VP pick.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He says that he's a little bit of a hillbilly himself, and he says that he really kind of identified with the way that Vance was brought up, and he saw a lot of himself in that. But what he really wants to be is Trump.
Yeah.
And
he's been tanning.
He has been tanning, and you know, it's probably just a matter of time before he gets the hairpiece. I mean, it's tempting to us bald guys to get the hairpiece, but I don't know that I'd get that one. I mean,
no, not that one.
Yeah, that's pretty rough, but
it's from the dollar store.
Right.
But
Mark, will you let us know when our audio's on?
I think it's on. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
all right, cool.
Well, you know, the thing that's interesting was he was just like he said that, you know, just the speaking style. He really admired it, Trump's speaking style, and he said he wanted to
emulate that in like closing
absolutely.
arguments.
And he said he really, you know, appreciated his struggle, and that he felt, you know, that he was very misunderstood, and you know, but. Yeah, more power to him. It'll be an interesting year after Venus. But, anyway, so we'll do
the intro.
Okay.
Y'all can
you're going to lead all this, right?
Yes. Yes. Hello and welcome to Reasonable Doubt, brought to you by the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. I am one of your hosts, Murray Newman, the immediate past president of the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association, and with me, as always, is my friend and our treasurer extraordinaire, Justin Harris.
Hey, I'm not always here, but I'm here tonight.
You were on vacation last month, and it seems like it's been forever since we've been back here, but it's good to have you back. Joe Venus was here last time. He
sat here?
He did. Hopefully they've had the place exterminated since then. We also have another member of our executive board at HCCLA. Our special guest tonight is our secretary, Vik VIj.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Happy to be here. It's been a few years since I've been here.
Have you been on person?
Yes.
In person?
Yes, a couple times. I think one was on Zoom, and I wore a jacket and basketball shorts.
Yeah.
And then I was on with Justin and JV here a couple years ago also.
Mm-hmm. The good old Zoom
You also
days.
didn't have pants on then either.
No, but that was a different reason.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So quick with that.
So it's been a while. We with the holiday, we're on an every 2 week schedule now with new episodes. And but last 2 weeks ago was 4th of July, so we missed we had a jump. So it's been a while, and it's good to be back. Lot going on at the courthouse these days.
There has been a lot. Well, it got shut down again.
Right. We had a little minor hurricane. Is y'all's power up?
Yeah, we lost power for most of Monday, but luckily we got it back Monday night.
So what area of the county do you live in?
I actually don't live in Harris County, which you brought up earlier today.
Oh, yeah,
I live
that's
just
right.
outside. I live in Brazoria County. I live in Pearland.
Okay. And I think that everybody kind of thought that they'd get hit worse, but they kind of did a hook around and.
Yeah, the areas west of us got hit much harder. We got very lucky. I mean, there's some trees down in our neighborhood, but not a lot of major damage, so we're very thankful.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, we're up in Jersey Village. We lost power for 4 days. Lots of trees down. You know, part of the problem with this storm, I noticed a lot of trees weren't snapped because it rained real hard for Sunday.
Yeah.
The ground was real wet. Then the wind all came through and just knocked these big old
They
trees.
just fell over.
But I don't know what we're gonna do with Center Point. My favorite graffiti has been that one on I-10 that's
Center
Pointless.
Yeah.
Like that is brilliant.
Oh, they're diabolical.
They are.
Yeah.
Like a barrel of pickles.
Yeah.
About as helpful as a barrel of pickles.
Yeah, they were pretty useless. What was funny is we were out of town. We have a little cabin out by the lake, and I think a lot of people who weren't in town for the hurricane were watching on their Nest cams.
Right.
And it was like riding a bicycle when you don't really know how. It's like, it's still going. We could do this. We could totally do it. We're not going to lose power. And then all of a sudden it went out.
It just
And I
stopped.
was like, oh man! And it was out for us. We were very lucky to have somewhere else to hang out, but it was out for 3 days. But the people are missing the most huge miracle that we had a major weather event and did not lose the CJC. I mean, this is a building that goes out of commission if you look at it funny, and it's fine. Like the CJC,
There's like 3 elevators out.
Well, yeah, but the building is not. Normally at this time we would be in a warehouse trying to hold. It was weird. It was like opposite day. Like 49 San Jacinto went underwater, and they're talking
condemned.
Yeah, they're talking about condemning 49 San Jacinto, which is, for those of you all who don't practice in Harris County, it's the it's the old processing center. There's a new one now, but it used to be where we all, after Harvey, or was it after Ike, where we were holding emergency dockets in there.
Harvey.
And all the hurricanes are starting to run in together. But it went underwater, but the CJC was fine. I was talking to Judge Lacayo, and he's like, yeah, no, we got air conditioning. Everything's good. I mean, it only took us 25 years, but we finally got that building shored up to withstand a Category 1 hurricane.
And now we've outgrown it. There's no more floors for courts.
Yeah.
They've already pushed the PD's office back out.
That was ridiculous. That building is just. It used to be that you could count on the courts to be numbered on floor by floor, and now you have to remember. Now you have to remember them, which is not good. The older I get.
Right. 8's on 9, 9's on 10.
The 486.
46 is on the bottom, and the 174th is on the top.
Yeah, it's and so is the 488, the 487th, the 488th. They're also.
They're on 20 also.
That's right.
So the numbering system is just all wonky.
Will they use the condemned footprint of 49 San Jacinto to build a new criminal justice center?
Well, I have always thought that what they really need to do is take 1301 Franklin, which is where the old sheriff's office and jail was, because if you look at Fort Bend, I think Fort Bend does it right.
They have the best courthouse.
They have the best courthouse. It's long and it's not very tall. Yeah. Yep. And there's escalators, and it avoids just the madhouse that we deal with every day of people waiting for an elevator. And as you pointed out, the elevators are down again. We weren't going to get out totally unscathed.
Right. And
it's just ridiculous. We're waiting on just to get out of that building has been the trick. Getting into it's been okay. It's just trying to get an elevator to get out that's been crazy.
Probably spend 20 minutes a day just waiting on elevators.
Right.
At least.
And those poor bald cypress trees that they planted out front, they've always blown down to the west, and this time the storm blew them to the east. And they just come back out and plop them back in. Those new trees they planted out front? They've been there for a year. I think they've replanted them 4 times.
I don't know why they even bother trying to beautify any
I
part of that.
appreciate that they're
part.
trying to. Appreciate that they're trying.
I mean, do you? I mean, it's.
I don't know if they're doing a real good job, but
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, is it really worth the effort? But
I'd like to have a pretty building. I look across the street at the civil courthouse, and I'm like, oh, there's no one in there, and it's beautiful.
so what else?
Maybe why it's beautiful.
Fair. It gets a lot of
I don't
traffic.
think courthouses were really meant to be beautiful past the 1920s.
No,
I
they're
mean,
not built
like
that
you
way.
look at, like I'm from Brazos County, and it's got to be easily the ugliest courthouse in the state. I mean, it's built in 1960. It's a cube.
Yeah.
It's just an ugly cube. It's got no personality whatsoever.
They're doing a lot of construction on that one, too.
Rosario used to be like that too,
Yeah.
but now they've
gotta
redone
build
it,
a
and now
big
it's a
new
taller.
Big new building, but that's eventually, I believe, going to be an annex for the DA's office and administration, and they're going to redo the old building and make the courts back in that building.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're going to build a new building, move everybody out to the new one, then redo the old building.
I think that's the plan, the $44 million plan.
Man, court costs, they got to go somewhere, right?
That's right, I guess.
Yeah.
So what else is going on in the courthouse?
Well, let's see. We talked about trials. So trials were shut down because of the storm. They canceled jury service most of last week.
But I think that's back to normal.
Yeah, they're starting them back again. I had one this week. Let's see, what else? I'm trying to think of things that we can actually talk about.
Well-
Private things.
Well, yeah, no. Well, I think the one topic that kind of came out yesterday, and we talked about, we had our board meeting today, and we talked about some things. But the new big issue is that Kim Ogg issued a memo yesterday about body cams. And I was, every once in a while I'll go try to dust off my old blog and write about something. And the memo that Kim said is she's now basically demanded that there be no audio recordings whenever an officer calls into intake. And so I think,
Explain what that means.
yeah, I was going to say, let's back up a little bit and talk about what DA intake is. Do they have it at Galveston?
They did, yeah.
Was it a 24/7 deal?
It was 24/7, yeah.
Okay.
During the day, it was whoever was on call or the grand jury prosecutor, but overnight and weekends, it was felony chiefs that are rotated
Okay.
on a weekly basis.
And how many prosecutors would normally be manning it at any given time?
During the day, 2 or 3. Overnight, just 1.
Okay. So DA intake, for people that aren't familiar with the Harris County system, in Harris County, they do what's called direct filing, which means that if a person gets charged, they're most likely going to be in court the next day or the day after that. It happens right then and there.
They get arrested and the charges get filed right away.
Right.
Yeah.
And the way they facilitate that is they have a process called DA intake, where officers actually have to get permission to file a charge. It's not like that in other counties. In Brazos County, Bryan College Station area, for instance, the officers can arrest whoever they want. They bring them in. They usually make bond pretty quickly, and if they don't, then it's a little bit of a different process. But then they fill out their charge and they drop it off at the DA's office or the county attorney's office. It's bifurcated in Brazos, and those charges will get reviewed at some point. It could be 2 weeks, it could be a couple of months. It's not unusual at all for me to get clients who get arrested on a Friday and they don't have their first court date for 3 months because they haven't gotten around to reviewing it. But in Harris County, it's different, and I guess it's similar in Galveston, which isn't surprising since there's a lot of bleed over in personnel.
Right, there is, but it's still a great deal of time, and less people stay in jail until they get their first court date.
Right.
It could be weeks or months.
Yeah.
Right.
But I've heard officers complain a lot because they're like, we get treated like children, like we don't know what's a good charge to arrest somebody. But I've always thought that the principle of having it was good, because they can basically run by a prosecutor and say, this is my probable cause for detaining somebody, this is why I investigated, this is what I found, do you think this is worthy of finding probable cause to file this charge? And ideally, it flushes out a lot of bad charges. And
did you work intake?
Oh yeah, all the
Did
time.
you work intake in Galveston?
I did.
Okay.
Oh yeah, all the time. So it's a way to make extra money, or it was when I was there. But I've been gone since the end of 2008, and when I was there, body cams weren't a thing,
Right.
at all. And that's a huge difference maker because the advent of body cameras has really changed policing, especially on street level crimes
Right.
and those things that can be solved. But with every time we have a new piece of technology, you've got to look into what are the rules that we're going to have for that. And so I'm kind of hogging the conversation here. Why don't somebody jump in and talk about how you understand the rules of policies for the agent. Let's talk about the agency policies.
Well, I got you a little derailed,
Okay.
but you were talking about the intake process. So a police officer calls and tells the DA, and then they kind of formulate what the charge is going to be, decide what to, even whether to charge them in some cases. The issue that Kim Ogg's memo is supposed to address from yesterday is that some of the officers would leave their body cam running while they make that phone call in their patrol car and with the person in the back seat or handcuffed outside, and they have that conversation with the DA.
Right.
And for us, that's a lot of times that's gold.
It can be, certainly can be.
Yeah, when you can hear what facts he's choosing, because if you've got the body cam, that's usually 20 minutes or an hour into the video, and the first 20 minutes or hour are him talking to witnesses and seeing what they say. Then you get to go see what he or she selectively tells the intake DA, what they leave out, how they phrase things, if there's any follow-up that the DA tells them to do, and whether they do that or not. I don't get that on a lot of videos. A lot of times they mute it because they're allowed to mute it.
Right.
Yeah,
and so before we get into the Kim Ogg's policy though, because what I wanted to bring up is that the different agencies have had policies on themselves on when an officer must have it on, and it wasn't like that when it started out. When it was,
so you mean like Harris County Sheriff's Office has a directive for their officers to use their body cam one way. Houston Police Department, HPD, has a slightly different policy for the HPD officers. Yeah.
Right.
Now Kim Ogg, who doesn't have anybody who's been issued a body cam, has now issued a directive to all agencies in Harris. Well, to her office.
That affects them.
All the agencies in Harris County.
Well, and so one of the things that I thought was interesting to just kind of look at the evolution of the policy on the body cams was at first it was kind of a novelty. If you got one, it was cool because it used to be that every DWI, when it used to be they were all dash cams.
Right.
And then they became body cams. And then body cams became so prevalent, there was an expectation that they be on at all times when dealing with the case. Like, have y'all seen in the reports where they have to justify or explain or note if something that they're describing was not caught on body cam?
Right.
Like they have to explain if it wasn't recording. I mean, you've seen that.
I've seen that, or there was a technical issue, or my battery died, or it's
They have to
notated
fill out a
specifically.
form.
Right.
Yep.
But what policies have y'all noticed about when they're allowed or mandated to turn it off?
I've not seen it where it's been turned off, but this is kind of going back to what you guys were discussing earlier about different agencies having different policies.
Right.
To make a long story short, I represented a guy with mental health issues who was slow rolling through a very large apartment complex late at night. He was lost. He was looking for his friend's apartment. He couldn't find building 13, 11, 12. He was going really slow. And a courtesy officer lived there and thought he looked suspicious and started interacting with him, and the client had mental health issues. Cop took it to 10 right off the bat. Client responded, took it to 10. His backup came, HPD came, and they ended up justifying a reason to break the window of his car with a baton, and my client's dog, it was a large German Shepherd, jumped out and bit the officer. And so the other agency, not HPD, all their microphones turned off. And there was an HPD sergeant there who never turned her mic on, and she was never turned her mic off, trying to downplay the whole situation. Well, the other agency turns their mic back on, describes what happens while calling intake, and they ended up talking about aggravated assault for the dog. They ended up finding a charge I've never seen in almost 15 years of practicing criminal law, of a terroristic threat of commanding the dog to bite the officer.
Wow.
Which, when we watched the HPD video, never happened.
Yeah.
He just said, I've got a dog, I've got a dog, I've got a dog, not, hey, dog, go bite this cop.
Sick 'em.
So had we not had the HPD sergeant with her microphone on, we probably would have been trying that case sooner.
Right.
Yeah. They ended up dismissing it once the DA's office saw the HPD body cam.
So
that wasn't turned
one
on.
agency was following their policy and turning off and turning on their microphones in one way, and they caught crosstalk from another agency that exonerated your client.
Correct.
Wow.
And the thing is that like none of us would want to spend our whole day walking around mic'd up because we're all human, but these things have the potential to capture things that are very much
Diabolical.
case changers. and diabolical, and a bucket of pickles as well. But you know, we've seen instances where it might even be something benign that becomes even bigger. And I can remember kind of a predecessor to the body cam, a homicide cop who was interviewing a guy on a child fatality case, and he forgot to turn his mic off, or his camera, his little pocket recorder on there. And he walked in, and he was doing a good job talking to my client and all that stuff. Well, then he walks off, and he starts just going, "Oh, I've got this guy crying. I'm in here acting like I'm sad about this kid, boo-hooing it all up." And I was like, this is not going to hurt me.
Yeah.
You know, and you point that out to the prosecutor, and I'm like, I'm going to have fun with this guy on the stand, and you can't get around it having to put him on because he's the guy that takes this guy's statement.
Right.
But he's also basically taking it really, really lightly. So more information, I think, is always better for us.
Agreed.
You know, because it's there one way or another. The state's going to know it, and the more we know, it's the better for us.
Absolutely.
And the issue, though, is that whatever the different police agencies have, the DA's office, and why I think this is important for us, suddenly having a policy on telling them you need to cut it off or not participate in this conversation. And what are
Say
the
what it is. Say what the
Why don't y'all
policy
say
is.
what it is? Did you do your homework?
No, I did do my homework.
I have it right here.
No, the policy was when the police agencies call into DA intake, they are to turn off their body cameras, the microphone on their body cameras, so that the conversation with the DA's office is not recorded.
All right.
Well, the DA is supposed to ask them, where is it? For these reasons, all DAO staff at intake and in specialized divisions such as special crimes have been instructed to ask law enforcement officers at the beginning of any conversation if they are being recorded. If the officer indicates in the affirmative, prosecutors have been instructed to stop the conversation and ask the officer to submit the case facts in writing through DIMS, which is the computer system.
So before we get into the legal aspects of it, let's talk about the optical look at this.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, Kim Ogg just basically told every single prosecutor working intake to say, "Are you wearing a wire?"
Hey, are you recording this call, officer?
Like a street crime,
Right.
like a street criminal who's worried that they're about to get stung in a bus. Like, are you wearing a wire? Like,
have to tell me if you're wearing a wire.
Yeah, under the law, you
Imagine
have
like
to
a
tell me.
precinct 2 traffic cop calling who didn't know about this. Like, "Hey, this is Jones at precinct 2. I gotta go." Like, "Officer, am I being recorded right now?" Like, "What? Who is this?" Like, I mean, I don't know how these calls are going to go.
Right. Like,
I mean-
but the thing is that at some point, what is the DA's office worried about hiding?
Exactly.
Like, why is this a thing? Like, it's like, I mean, do we have like a bunch of DAs that want to tell some racist jokes that they don't want captured? I mean, to me, it's astounding that Kim Ogg put pen to paper to write down and say, "Don't let yourself get caught getting recorded." It just, I mean, it's just an error. I mean, it just adds this huge air of suspicion.
She literally says that this is because any and all recorded conversations between law enforcement officers and assistant district attorneys are subject to disclosure under Michael Morton and the Texas discovery laws. Therefore, in all disclosed recordings, the thought process of both the arresting officer and the advising intake prosecutor will become part of the case, subject to cross-examination by the defense. Again, what are you worried about with that? What are y'all talking about that we're not supposed to like be able to cross-examine you or ask about? Like,
And the thing about it too is just like, is Kim not heard of a motion in limine,
Right.
or a relevance objection?
Right.
Because there are some things in there that sure, it's really nice to know what the process is, but add it to a motion in limine, and the defense attorney doesn't ever get to ask what the prosecutor's thinking or what the cop was thinking. Where were you going with that? I mean, objection, relevance, sustained. That's the end of it.
Right.
And so I don't think that's it. I think what she is worried about is a potentially embarrassing situation being said. But we have all these things that she's citing. These are not, in my opinion.
Say that again. What do you think? What do you mean?
Well, like, I think that's the thing. Like, I cannot come up with a valid government reason for why they wouldn't want to be transparent in that process.
Right.
other than the fact that Kim Ogg's office has just now become notorious for taking crap charges. And what happens if all of a sudden it becomes very public that these charges that are being filed that are ruining our clients' lives are being based on 15 to 20 second conversations?
Right.
And that's the real thing that they want to hide.
Because she goes on to say that potentially those recorded conversations between law enforcement officers and intake attorneys could make both of them witnesses, which complicate the cases, delay case completion, reduce intake staffing bandwidth, and reducing prosecutors' immunity. You work backwards on those. Reducing prosecutors' immunity?
From what?
From what? What do y'all need immunity from?
Is it just a conversation?
And then reducing intake staffing bandwidth. So you're really worried that they're talking about this so much and having relevant conversations that they're going to get dragged in as witnesses in these trials and no one's going to answer the phone. Now I really want to know what y'all are talking about on those phone calls.
Right.
I kind of wanted to know before, but now I really want to know.
Yeah, what makes it worth an edict that says you can't have it? It's the catch-22. It's like, well, I didn't really care, but now I do. And the fact of the matter is we know that sometimes, not often, but sometimes it's a huge difference maker in how a case is handled.
Yeah.
So Vic, take us through what an average, not that serious crime, what an intake call would be like.
Or like a criminal trespass or a criminal
Sure.
mischief.
Yeah.
The officer would call the DA's office. If they couldn't find the intake or grand jury prosecutor, they'd find whoever was on call. Hey, this is Officer Jones with Galveston PD. We found Justin Harris wandering inside an apartment complex. He's previously been told not to be here. We've got the criminal trespass warning with his signature on it.
That matter has been expunged.
Well, I think I might be in trouble for talking about it now.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, but
you're now on notice.
Okay, dang. So, yeah, Justin Harris has been told not to be here. Here's his signature. We've got it. He's here again. What would you like to do? Well, I think it sounds like a criminal trespass. Arrest him.
Yeah.
And that's
Take him to jail.
And in all honesty, that's the long version. I mean, like,
can be, yeah.
A lot of times you just get a cop like, hey, man, found this guy up there. We've given him 3 warnings not to be here anymore. It's like, that's cool, trespass, the end. And I mean, it's literally.
What's your name? M. Nerman.
Yeah, that's like literally the longest part of the conversation would be spelling the name.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah.
And, I mean, how many, back when they filed trace cases, just like saw a guy jaywalking, search incident arrest, found a crack pipe on him. End of story.
Right.
And that's it. And then you go in and you're talking to juries and you're like, how many of you all would consider the fact that he has been charged and indicted as evidence of crime? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was all a 3-second phone conversation.
Right.
They got him charged.
Yeah, because.
And then 15 seconds in front of a grand jury, they got him indicted.
Yeah, they may add like another half paragraph to what they actually tell them. But I just tried to pick a jury on a ag sex assault of a child case, and we busted a panel on day 1, 65. We bring in 100 the next day, bust that panel too. Like out of 100,
on presumption of innocence.
On grand jury indictment as evidence of guilt.
Oh God.
And which really shocked, and Fifth Amendment. I mean, but like I got a shocking number of people that said, yeah, I'm going to consider the indictment as some evidence of guilt. Yeah, where there's smoke, there's fire. And I think, you only need to look at the comment section on any local news media, probably in any city in the country, to realize, oh, this guy's charged, we need to hang him. Like, oh yeah, this guy, the accusations, all I needed to know, that's end of story, this person's horrible. And the problem with that is when that vitriol comes with the jury panel.
Yeah.
Because busting those panels didn't do anybody any favors, including the alleged complainants on those cases.
Right.
And I had a case. So this is the story I wanted to bring up about these. About them banning the recording during intake. Was I had a case that popped up in court, and I read the DIM summary, and it's basically it's a daughter. The defendant is a mother who's got an out of control teenage daughter, and they get into a verbal altercation, and mom allegedly pulls a knife on daughter. That's what's in the DIM summary. They say we talked to daughter's friend who confirms that. I'm like, okay, seems like a legit ag assault. And that's just in the DIM summary. And to be clear for those of you all who don't practice in Harris County, the DIM summary is exactly what it sounds like. It's a summary. It's not the full police report. It's not the full police report on what happened. So on that day, I read the full police report. And what they didn't mention in the dim summary is they spoke to 2 adults who were not teenagers that were besties, who said, we saw it too, and we didn't see the knife. So it became really interesting to me on whether or not that police officer had conveyed to the DA at intake that there were 2 additional witnesses who saw this whole same thing happen, and he just left out that part, because I believe, I still have some faith in the DA intake system, that if they had known that, they wouldn't have taken that charge.
So what happened?
Ultimately, they dismissed it, but it was after setting, and instead of this lady had gone to jail, she had sat in jail for a solid week or so, before, because we can't make any decisions in court,
Right.
and we filed it, because that's the problem.
Talk to our chief.
That's the problem that we have at the DA's office, and I think it's probably it's not exclusive to Harris County, but these people feel like that once they file the charge, they're married to it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had a friend once tell me that if marriages were as hard to get into as they were to get out of, there'd be a lot less divorces. And I think the same thing would apply to these charges. If we wouldn't have to dismiss so many of them if we did a little more thinking on the front side. And what better way to illustrate that thinking than listening to what the cop's telling the prosecutor when they file the charges?
Exactly.
Absolutely. I'm on the front end of your situation. I got appointed to a case this morning. Guy was charged with assault of a family member, and they interviewed her and only her. Well, I spoke to his mother, the client's mother, this morning, and she said, well, there were 3 other adults there that never spoke to the police.
Yeah.
So I got an investigator working on the case now to go talk to these folks, and I think the case is ultimately going to be dismissed.
I had a burglary of a habitation. Client was told by a former landlord, she got evicted. You have till noon on Wednesday. All your stuff's in the garage. You have till noon on Wednesday to come get it. Get a truck, get it by noon on Wednesday. That's your only window of time. All the communications are by text, because the client didn't trust the landlord and didn't have any verbal comment. It was all text. And then she says, like, get a U-Haul and get your stuff out of the garage. You can go through the house, but we put everything that's yours in the garage. And so she goes to the house at like 9 a.m. She opens the garage with the door clicker that she still had. Her stuff's there. She looks through the house like, nah, my stuff's in the garage. She goes and gets a U-Haul and 2 friends. They back it up. They load everything in. And then the landlord reports her for burglary to the police. And the police, I have the video when the officer goes to the landlord's front door and gets her their story, and then goes out to the car and calls my client. And my client's like, what? No, they told me to go get my stuff. I went exactly how they told me, when they told me. And he's like, do you have those messages? And she's like, yeah. He's like, all right, send me those. She's like, okay, right away, to this number? And he's like, yeah. And so the body cam is on his chest, and he's sitting in his car. He's got the steering wheel, and then his hand is holding his cell phone. And he calls, he opens up his thing, goes through his contacts, and DA intake comes up. And it's ringing. He's got it on speakerphone. And then the screen's on, and then the DA picks up, and then the screen eventually kind of fades to black. And he's telling the DA, the whole story. And then the DA says, well, did you call the tenant? Like, yes. They said that they told her that she could come get her stuff. The landlord's saying, the hitch was the landlord saying, I told you I had to be there. Nowhere in the messages. It says, this is your one window, go get it. So he said, then the DA asked the officer, well, did you verify did you see any of these messages? And he's like, yeah, she sent me the messages. I looked at them, they don't say that. As he's saying that, you can see the message come across the top, like her phone number flashes across the top twice, and it just says like attachment, like her number and then attachment, and he doesn't open them and look at them.
Yeah.
He just bald-faced lies to the DA.
Well,
and they're like, okay, I'll take burglary charges.
And so, and that's another thing.
And I showed the DA that, and then I was like, here's the messages that she sent him. Do you want me to subpoena his cell phone so you can see that these are the exact ones? And they're like, no, we'll dismiss it.
Well, and that brings another layer to this, is that, we'll throw this to you, Vic. What do you do if you took charges on something and then the prosecutor's like, come look at this body cam and let's look at these are the charges, this is what he left out. And now you have a body cam recording of the stuff he's telling you that you can juxtapose against what's really happening live at the time. What's your reaction going to be towards that cop?
One, you're not going to trust him anymore.
Right.
And 2, you're going to hope you have really good notes of that conversation.
Well, but that's going to benefit the client, because you're going to be like, this guy's lying.
Right.
This case isn't going any further.
Right.
And how many times, you were never a prosecutor. Vic and I were both prosecutors in in different counties. How many times did we wrap up a serious case with, like, we bring in, you know, our lead investigator, and then, and what did you do after you got all this information? I called DA intake, and what did they say? They said file on him for capital murder, and you pass the witness, and you had this dramatic, you know, this dramatic moment. What if you've got that and your rebuttal when you're the defense attorney is like, well, yeah, you did that, but let's talk about what you told them and what you didn't tell them.
Yeah.
You told them this, didn't you?
They're going to, credibility's going to crumble in
and
front of that.
And you kind of left off this other guy that said it was somebody different, didn't you? Yeah, and so it's not really quite as powerful. You didn't give them all the information. You certainly didn't give them all the information that this jury's heard.
Right.
And why on earth can you craft a policy that says we're going to press the mute button on this, and you don't need to hear that?
Well, it's interesting. The memo doesn't say that.
Oh, I know. She's
so
not a complete idiot.
I wonder what how they're gonna react. Are they gonna be like, officer, am I being recorded? And they're like, no, you're not. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, is that really kind of what the read between the lines message is supposed to be here? Because she never says DAs are then instructed to tell the officer to please stop recording the conversation. You know, she straight up just says that you end the conversation and tell them to file the charges by paper. So I don't know how that's going to actually and practically work out. And I'm kind of curious to see if there's now a whole bunch of 2B warrants to get filed. I mean,
I don't know.
DWIs,
It's
a little
going to
bit
slow
longer
down their
conversations.
process. It's just bad policy, period.
And it's interesting that she put it in writing. I mean, I guess if anybody's going to do it, it's a lame duck who's on her way out, but that's crazy to me.
I mean, I can remember when I was a baby prosecutor, you know, getting a call from somebody who had detained some HPD who'd stopped somebody in River Oaks, and I remember this, and I was like, "Why'd you stop him?" He's like, "He's black. It's late at night. It's River Oaks." I'm like, "But what did he do?" And he's like, "You know." I was like, "No."
You had this happen, and
yeah. We're talking about the '99, 2000. I was just like, I rejected charges, but like there was no recourse because that guy had made a phone call, and he could have. I mean, he said, "This is Officer So and So." We don't ever listen to that. I mean, the phone call literally goes, "Hey man, this is Johnson from Baytown PD," and that goes in one ear out the other.
Yeah.
And then and they start telling you the facts, and I was just like, if you had somebody that knew that they were being recorded, perhaps they'd be, I don't know, let's throw this out there, professional.
Right.
And not, and realize that if they're going to stop and detain somebody, then they actually have to articulate a reason that is legal, not because of their suspicion. This is another positive reason to record them.
Well, and that actually kind of the flip side of that I just thought of is now when they're all being told, the DAs want y'all to turn off your microphone, they know we can say whatever we want. Now, and this is why we're doing this, right? We're flipping that off so we can say whatever the hell we want to you. And no one's going to ever know what we said. And we're on the same side of keeping the other side from knowing what that is.
Murray was talking about the African-American guy getting pulled over in River Oaks, 99-2000. Just a few years ago, there was an officer in Friendswood that was pulling cars over because they didn't look like they belonged in Friendswood.
Right. Was it Friendswood, Galveston?
It was Friendswood, yeah.
It was a female officer,
Sarah
right?
Carter.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she was involved in one of my cases that went.
How did that story end for her career?
She's still employed.
Yeah.
But they're not sponsoring her as a witness, at least the last time I had a DWI down there. And I had several felony DWIs that were on the verge of either going to trial or taking a plea that they dismissed.
Because it was her?
Because it was her. She was the lead officer.
Yeah. I didn't know she was still working. Wow. Right on a desk, I guess.
I just don't get how in 2024, when everybody is campaigning on transparency and, Pat Lightghost used to say light is the best disinfectant, that we have a policy like this. It just seems so counterintuitive. I was speaking to a friend who is involved in the criminal justice system at a more important level than we are, and her point was they just finally said the quiet part out loud with this.
That's right.
And I'm just stunned. And part of me is just like, Kim Ogg's politics have always been a little bit questionable, certainly over the past 2 years. If she's just like going full-on right-wing Republican,
Shouldn't care anymore.
on this. She certainly doesn't care about trying to be embraced by the Democratic Party anymore. They've, you know, if we were going to go with the stereotype that they seem to care more about civil rights issues than
Right.
the right wing does, but she is just all in. Like, you don't need to know that. This is how we do things. And
well, it is kind of an interesting thing from when they rolled them out in 2014, 2015. And it was like fighting, like, when do you have to have them on? Oh, they have to have them all the way on from the time of the call to, like, they pull up in the sally port. You know, and now it's kind of odd to sit here and think you have a piece of technology that's big part of its intent is to keep everybody honest and professional.
Yeah.
And we're telling you, not telling you to turn it off. We're telling you we won't talk to you if you have it on.
yeah,
I mean,
and that's coming from the
shame on
prosecutors.
Kim Og for that. I mean, shame on you and then everybody below you. And you know, Mr. Leitner, it's difficult that you're involved in that, but that shows a lack of integrity and character, in my opinion.
And then now it's codified. I'd be willing to venture that Sean Tier will probably get rid of that policy.
It's an easy memo to like say this is no longer official policy of the DA.
You know, and I do a lot of work in Brazos County, and there's a lot of body cams because they don't do direct filing, so they don't have this issue. But the audio's on from start to finish, and those guys, it's painful to watch because it's so boring.
Yeah.
It's so boring because
to the
these
facts.
guys are being so professional that they are just, because they know they're being recorded, and it actually fosters more responsible police work.
Yeah.
And,
But is that a countywide policy in Brazos County?
you know, in Brazos County, it's a smaller county, so you got four. You got the Brazos County Sheriff's Office, Bryan PD, College Station PD, Texas A&M PD. That's the four of them together probably comprise 98% of all charges, and that's been my experience in watching them. Most of the cases I get there are usually college students that got arrested on Northgate, so most of them come from College Station PD.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, these are people where they're not chatting them up on the drive from the arrest to booking, but it's all there, and the audio's all there, and it doesn't give me much to work with.
It's countywide policy in the sense that there is not an intake there. So there's not any point during that arrest time when they're going to be on the phone with a DA. Maybe in the bigger cases, they're on the phone with like an investigator at a different agency or higher above them who they're about to hand off the sexual assault to or something. But but no, you don't. So that's why you don't have that as much in those counties. And so they're just not interacting with the DAs until trial.
And I mean, and if
You get a probable cause statement. In those, they have to file a probable cause statement, usually with the jail. Otherwise, the sheriff's like, I'm not taking this person into custody if I don't have like a piece of paper that says why we're holding them. Right. So I get those, and that's kind of in lieu of the intake conversation. But those are sworn written statements like the DIM summaries are.
Well, and you know, you look at it too, because detectives aren't required to do this like patrol are usually. You will see them. Some of them you see every once in a while. You'll see like I've seen some smaller agencies. I want to say that the detectives do have body cams, but it's not prevalent. Usually they're choosing when to start and when to stop, and you know, but the fact of the matter is that this system gets better with more transparency. The problem is it doesn't get easier for the state. It makes it harder. And it doesn't.
There's some stuff that isn't pretty.
Right.
That they don't want us to see.
Right.
And the only way we get it to stop is like your good friend Pat Lyko said, like sunlight's the best disinfectant. So shine some light on it.
Record that call.
Yeah.
Right.
And
It's really easy for a prosecutor with a nice leading question. Now, and officers are allowed to lie, right? Yes, they are. And then move on past it versus watching an officer blatantly lie to someone to get them to say what they want them to
say. Yeah.
And to me, I see this changing in a more progressive criminal justice system eventually. I think that you're going to have a hard time morally justifying that policy anymore, in my opinion.
From a legal standpoint, and I'm back and forth on this, how much of that is work product? I mean, the officer's a witness.
Right, yeah.
The DA's thoughts on what the officer's saying, maybe even some of their questions potentially are privileged.
Sure.
Now, Kim Og is straight up saying they're not.
Right.
They're discoverable under Michael Morton, so I'll use that in my motion to compel.
Right.
But are we entitled to those conversations on the defense side?
Well, I think that we are, just like depending on the content of it, just like we would be if a prosecutor has a meeting with the victim of a crime, and the victim says something that's so off kilter that it's become Brady. You know, I think that they could argue it's work product if it's just a woodshed meeting and everything's kind of on the same page. But, you know, if there's some sort of denial of the event or some substantive change in the facts as they're presented, then I think that even though it may have started out as work product, it no longer is. And I think the same, basically that same view of these body cam intake conversations could apply. Because the issue is, to me, and this is why this thing just offends me on so many levels, is you're almost encouraging Brady violations.
Exactly.
You're like, look, man, like the way that we.
Well, was the light green or was it red? Oh man, I really don't know.
Then
I'll go ahead and say it was red.
Don't say it out
That goes
loud,
to
and then it's
impeachment.
right.
Because that officer is a witness.
Right.
And so we get to go. You're not sure. You wrote in your report it was red. But you actually told the DA you weren't sure. You've made a statement about this before where you weren't sure it was red.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I'm cutting you
No,
off.
I mean, these are like just philosophically, I'm like, when does a Brady violation begin? At conception?
Right,
I mean, because it does. I mean, in my opinion, I mean, if this is some cop who's shading something in a way that they don't want you to know about it, the second they think it. We can't do anything about what they think, but the second they start to articulate it, it becomes...
Or act based on
right.
it. Yeah.
I think even when they're articulating it, because it's going to their mindset.
Right.
And it's something that like, well, see, you already decided this guy did it before you even talked to anybody. Think about how many, there's thousands of different scenarios where this is relevant and, in my opinion, discoverable. Mm-hmm. If it's like, you decided he's your shooter, you didn't even bother talking to these witnesses, did you? End of story. That's relevant.
If they're articulating facts,
if they're saying I don't need, if they're saying I don't need that,
right?
How's that not going to help a defense attorney in trial?
Right.
You know, you literally said you didn't need to talk to these other people.
You did not do a bite mark analysis on those bite marks on her skin,
right?
Or a footprint analysis.
Yeah.
By God, and juries expect that.
Right. But yeah, I mean, that
was too far. But I know what you mean. Just talking to witnesses. God, the trial we just got dismissed this week with a jury in the hall. The officer didn't talk to anybody. Like the next day, he talked to the one complainant, nobody else. And yeah.
Any names listed in the police report of witnesses?
Yeah, they're all in there.
Okay.
But they
no
all
one's
the
spoken
complainant gave, like, oh, this person was there, this person was there. He didn't talk to anybody. Nothing. He went to the surveillance footage, and the surveillance footage didn't even show it. And then he said, I asked the sergeant to go back pick it up later, and no one picked it up. It's amazing. All this technology's out there, and it would shine a light on so many things and make the facts much more clear. But the government wants to control what we get.
And I'll take it a step further. I think that those conversations ought to be public record. Like, not just exclusive to the case. I think the public ought to know, if we're going to have DAs that go in and tell juries, well, you should have known all this about, the priors that we're not allowed to tell you. I think the jury should know, well, you should see the crap that comes out of intake and the decisions that the lack of information that they're making these decisions on. I guarantee you, I bet you that our jury panels would be so much different if they got to see just how quickly those things get moved in through intake. Mm-hmm. Like, oh my gosh, they filed based on just that? This guy who's never been in trouble with the law before went to jail and arrested in front of his family and friends based on that rundown? That people might actually start expecting more out of their law enforcement. That doesn't hurt us, and that doesn't hurt the criminal justice system. Because it is what it is. Why hide from it?
Or our citizens in general.
Yeah.
Helps everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you tell them?
You got
to get into like a 15
that's my next step.
TikTok video.
Not only do we get it as part of the case, it should be something that if Nicole Hensley at the Chronicle or Maya Shea at Channel 13 wants to go pull that, be like, they filed this, but this is all they knew about it. And maybe shut up some of these crazy right-wing people that are on Twitter that are just saying, oh, if they got arrested, they're scum of the earth, and we need to get a lynch mob together.
Maybe. I'd like to figure out a way to get through to them and have them pay attention.
Because it's starting to matter. Like when I busted 2 panels in 2 days, I was like, all this vitriol that goes on about our system. Because I asked two different scaled questions on when I pick juries, and ask them, what do you think about Harris County right now? And everybody is in there. It's like, we are in ultra crisis mode, and like, it's no longer safe. And I'm like, I've been here 25 years. It's kind of always been like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a city. I'm not saying it's safe, but I don't think it's much more dangerous than it was when I moved here in '96. I mean,
Yeah.
jinxing myself to get robbed in the parking lot,
Right.
but you know.
Shit, I park next to you.
Yeah. I'll just throw, who can run faster?
Yeah.
All right, so we've talked that one to death. What else we got? What else is
I don't
going
know.
on?
There's still a lot there. You're right. It's a bizarre thing. I guess it's something maybe she felt like she could do as a lame duck, and maybe release it on she should have released it last week.
Yeah.
During the storm and everything was closed.
Yeah, should have been the non-news story.
Yeah, but we'll see if anybody else runs with it, but reasonable doubt. But maybe you heard it first here.
Well, speaking of Nicole Hensley, she, I believe, had been looking into working on an article that had been talking about some different events that were going on in the Harris County criminal justice system, and she and I were talking about it. We got on the topic of the Donald Davis seminar, and
Very good seminar HCCLA puts on every year.
Yes, and to me, it's like kind of our crown jewel. It's a CLE. We've had some great people. Stacy Bigger's been running it for a while to talk about basically self-care as a defense attorney or a prosecutor or a judge, and taking care of it, because this job can kill you if you let it get to you. And the reason I bring that up is because we actually have someone here who the job actually killed, and tell the audience what happened.
Sure. So 5 years ago, almost 5 years and 1 month ago, tomorrow will be 5 years and 1 month. I was in the courthouse in Brazoria County. I had a very difficult client with a very difficult hearing. I was also much heavier because of stress in the job, among other issues. And during the hearing, I started feeling really sweaty, and I felt pressure on my chest. And I finished the hearing, and I looked at my phone. I Googled symptoms for a heart attack. I thought, I'm 37. There's no way I'm having a heart attack. Must be a panic attack. And I went to another floor, sat down. A couple people came and asked me, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine. I'm going to go back to the other court. I'm going to handle my plea, and then I'm going to go home. And a friend of mine, Chris Gissentanner, told me, no, man, you got to go to the hospital. You got to go to the hospital. He took me to the hospital, and I got there, and I said, is it a panic attack? And they said, they hooked me up to some machines and said, no, you're having a widowmaker. You are going to die. Jesus. You have about a 1% chance of living. And they called Life Flight, and I got on a helicopter in Angleton and took about a 15-minute ride to Galveston to UTMB. Somehow my now wife beat the helicopter to the hospital from North Houston. Never left my side, and I had had a heart attack. They wheeled me into the OR. I've had 2 stents put into my leg. It was a wake-up call because I've tried to de-stress as much as I can, and it's hard. You're dealing with murder cases and family members and baby mamas and clients that can be unreasonable, and every day is a fight, parking, courthouse, prosecutors, judges, etc. But I've taken that to really be a change in my lifestyle. I've lost almost 100 pounds. I try to eat better. I work out almost every day, and I try to just, at some point in the day, that's it. That's all the work I can do today, because you have to find a work-life balance.
There's always more you can do. There's
always more you can do.
Work you
There
can
always is more you can do. But I consider myself very lucky that it was absolutely a wake-up call. I've had 5 years and almost an entire month watching my girls grow up and being a better friend and being a better husband and being a better son, and I found it to be a blessing in disguise. But you got to find a way to de-stress in a healthy way. That's not going to Whataburger, racing from courthouse to courthouse.
Right.
Yeah.
Because everyone loves Whataburger, but you can't do it
every day.
twice a week.
Well, and I think, not to give you the big head or anything, but you're someone who I think could accurately be described as someone who is immensely popular amongst your peers at the courthouse. People love you.
Well,
and when this happened, it got a lot of us shook. It's George Carlin used to say when somebody found out that somebody died, they'd say, "But I just saw him. Well, that didn't seem to help." Like that. But with you, it was just like, "But I just saw Vik. He's like, how's this going on?" But I mean, how much would you attribute the medical issue that you went through to job stress?
I don't know that I couldn't quantitate it, but definitely a significant factor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did doctors try to do anything like that? Were they like, here's the cause of it?
Well, part of it was just
Obviously, they told you
genetics.
things to change differently.
Oh, they told me you got to quit your job.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I said I can't. I'm not qualified to do anything else,
Right.
but I'm making a major lifestyle change.
Okay.
And I went hardcore, no carbs for almost a year. I lost a bunch of weight, then I started going back to limited carbs because we live in Houston. We've got the best food in the world.
Yeah.
Asian food, Mexican food, everything. It's all carbs. So you go back to a little bit, and then I put weight back on. So I went back to it, and I'm just trying to do the best I can, and eat healthy.
You
and
look good.
work out.
How much did you have to spend on like a whole new wardrobe?
Oh, I just bought 10 new suits, man. It was
Jesus,
brutal.
that sucks.
Brutal. Yeah.
You look good.
Thanks, man.
I'm glad you're still with us.
I'm glad to still be here.
You're like the second walking dead person. We've had Rand Mincer is the other one.
Yeah.
Rand came to my house the day after I got out of the hospital and brought an entire bag of vegetables and said, "You can never eat meat again." And I said, "Rand,
Rand's the
love you, man. I love you, man. I can't do that."
I worked in the DA's office in Brazos County when I was in college as an intern, and we had a guy that had drowned. And I don't remember his last name. He's a nice guy. His name was Jim, but he had been deceased for like 3 minutes before they got him, and we just called him Dead Jim after that. But there's a legendary story, and I think it's true about somebody that literally had a heart attack and died in the holdover talking to clients. I mean, like in the 80s or 90s. And
Well, Donald Davis, the man the seminar was named after, he tried capital murder cases, and he.
Right.
It just got I never met the man. My understanding was that he had
Super
just gotten
nice.
done with one, and he asked the judge. He had another one lined up like the next Monday. He asked the judge if he could get a continuance because he just had this several week long capital murder trial, and the judge denied the continuance. I think it's a judge that we know, and
I think it's a judge who's now in the state legislature who likes passing a lot of really
Yes.
hardcore anti-crime. It was Joan Huffman.
Joan Huffman, right? She denied the
Yeah.
continuance, and he took his
I mean, it's-
life over the weekend.
Yeah.
And
And
this is a high. I think if you kind of whittle everything out, they used to say dentists have the highest suicide rate. I think it's actually capital murder defense attorneys have the highest occupational suicide rate.
well, or even if it's not like an affirmative act of attempting to end your life, we drink ourselves to death.
Right.
We
High rates of
smoke
heart disease,
ourselves,
cancer.
smoke,
Yeah.
vape. I mean, it's these things. And see, I got diagnosed with diabetes last year, so I've pretty much stopped drinking. So now I get to be preachy.
Yeah.
Which I've got no problem with the hypocrisy
You've always
of
been
that.
preachy.
I mean, do as I say, not as I do. But it's it is a high pressure job, and you were a wake up call for a lot of people.
Jordan Lewis.
Jordan,
man.
Jordan was another one. Someone
Jumped
who's
back on my rowing machine.
younger than me. I mean, Vic's a lot younger than me. So I mean, you're 42 now.
42, yeah.
I mean, you're 10 years younger than me. So I mean, it's. We used to joke in law school, if you could find someone that drank more than you didn't have a problem. And it's like you're like, man, if someone can do that and still be alive and moving, they're doing fine. But then you have someone like Vic who wasn't living anywhere
No,
near the
clean
destructive
life, good guy.
lifestyle that we were, and he has a heart attack. And
Yeah.
you're like, we really need to take
Slow
this
things
business
down.
seriously
Right.
on that. So, I mean, do you think like now your outlook on life in general is just different after that event?
Absolutely. I take every day. I don't take any day for granted. I know that I had a very serious chance of not being here. And so I take every day for the joy I find in little things. Just having a conversation with a friend or looking out at the ocean or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I take vacation.
Good.
I work to play, honestly. A couple friends of mine called me Vacation Vic. It's like, well, you know what? I want a trip planned so that I have something to look forward to because I need that for my stress.
I've decided you're cloned because like I'm your friend on Facebook and I'll be like, man, he's somewhere, but then he also seems to be at the
just saw him
courthouse.
in court.
It didn't seem to help.
Yeah.
But like but no, it's just like I thought you were in France. Oh, that was yesterday. I'm back here today. And I'm also in Brazoria County as we speak.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, it's a sobering thought, and I think that there've been the Donald Davis seminar, and there've been some other things going on around the courthouse that have made us kind of put a lot of things in perspective. So
Lennon Prince died just a couple
yeah,
months ago.
another young guy. It's frightening. Well, this is telling us that we have got 1 minute left. It's flown by. You know, I think the time goes by faster when we're complaining. And we had, you know,
A lot to complain
we had a
about.
lot to complain about. And,
Kim Oggs, new policy, heart attacks.
you know, I mean, this show's going to become boring if Sean Tier is elected and just fixes everything.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's like, how's he doing? He's just doing great, man. What, you know, what are you watching
Just
on
start
TV these
focusing on
days?
Montgomery County, I guess. at that
Yeah,
point.
there we go.
We can talk about a lot up there.
Well, Vic, thank you for coming on.
Oh, it was my pleasure to be here.
Appreciate
for
hearing
having me.
you sharing your story and love your insight on what we've got going on. And Justin, thanks as always. Any final thoughts, guys?
No, just have a good time. Everybody be safe and have fun out there. Glad you're still with us and you're with us tonight, Vic.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Thanks.
We'll see y'all in 2 weeks. This
All
is
right.
Murray Newman signing off, and we'll see you then.